Can. Live on Ziti TV again. Apparently, we're a minute late. My clock says 11:01 now.
We're
How
here.
how dare we? We're here,
How's it going,
and
Clint?
it's going all right. Sunny today up in Western New York. That's always a surprise.
Happy Friday.
And happy Friday to you.
Yeah,
All right, so
this
let's.
is one of the highlights, that's for sure.
Ziti TV is a highlight for you.
Absolutely, yeah.
I love it. Love it.
Always get to
Awesome.
learn something.
Well, let's see what we're going to talk about today. All right, here's what we're planning to talk about. First, we're going to go through the ZD release changelog, which there was a release this week.
Was it a big one?
We'll have to wait and find out.
All right,
Version
cool.
0.25.4. And it'll be fun because, even though I'm part of the team and I pay attention mostly during the weekly calls, there's probably going to be stuff in here that I will not understand entirely, and I'll just chat through it the best I can. And should there be a gap or if there's any questions, be a great way to ask in discourse to get an actual answer. So maybe we'll put it to the test to see if anybody is watching our
Yeah.
changelog review.
I'm honestly not sure how you keep up with all of that. As soon as you added me to the list, I started getting the notifications for everything. Now I'm following everything, and it's taken my GitHub inbox to an order of magnitude, at least, maybe two. So
Yeah,
no, it's just more information. It's a really good system, and I want a lot of that. I just have to figure out how to manage it all.
good luck. Well, when you figure it out, you can let me know because I've never figured it out. I find there's a product out there called Crucible from Atlassian, and I miss
A pull
Crucible.
request.
I miss Crucible desperately because it did a much better job of this, in my opinion.
In
Right
terms of
now,
workflow.
I have to deal with emails and chat notifications, and it's just kind of chatty. So
Yeah.
when you
Well, I
figure
mean,
it out, you let me know.
there's some good features in there that I've already found useful. I like the way GitHub's the features that I've encountered that have helped so far.
Cool. All right, and then we're going to look at how OpenZiti protects services. So we had a request on the discourse thread to talk about the differences in an OpenZiti connection as opposed to a traditional network connection. That should be pretty easy and obvious. So we'll go over that in case that's not clear to anybody, because new learners, it's certainly not going to be obvious.
That makes
It's
me
obvious
think that
to
they're
us.
wondering how it appears on the wire.
Yeah, in fact, one of the questions that is mentioned is things like NS lookup or dig. And so when I see terms like that, I also think of tunneler as opposed to application embedded. So it'll give us a chance to discuss the differences there.
Oh yeah.
And then another good one is, how do you verify these things even work? Which is a constant problem, and I'm sure you've had plenty of experience troubleshooting ZD and making sure that you've created what you thought you were going to create and how you were going to create it. And so perhaps we'll fire up a
basic troubleshooting kind of thing.
Yeah, right. Maybe we'll SSH into one of my one ZD environment and take a look at some users or whatever. Maybe make a service. Who knows? We'll see how much time we have left.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot for 1 hour, but we'll see how much is in the changelog.
We'll see. Well, let's. What a great segue, Ken. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Love it. Let's see. I had this changelog open, and now it is not open. Let's open that changelog up again, shall we? Is it over here? It is over here. It's hiding.
Architectural marvel just
hiding off screen.
Is that your wallpaper?
Architectural marvel?
Yeah, I saw this beautiful architecture or something for a second there.
Huh.
It just like flashed up on the screen.
Well, that's terrifying. I wonder what else I wonder what else Restream is showing you. All right, cool.
Oh, that must be your wallpaper.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it. Oh, I see. All right, fine. We'll take a 4-second detour here. Let's stop sharing. Nope. I clicked the wrong button. Oh no, it's all going off the rails now, Ken. Let's share.
I had a strange phenomenon a couple days ago. I was in a Zoom with somebody, and maybe it was you. It was Steven. Every time I moved my mouse towards the Zoom window, it would run away. I was like chasing it across the screen.
That would be a great
quitting time. Yeah,
So
that's
I have a little background switcher upper. It comes from Bing actually.
oh,
So,
there's some
everybody
nice
I'm
photos
sure
and stuff.
is yeah, it rotates between, architecture or animals
That's
or
nice.
whatever. Something cute, right? All right. So, let's go back to here, our changelog, let's end big in it. All right. I have seen a message come through. No, that's not it. All right. So, um, release 25.0.25.4. We've got a whole bunch of enhancements listed. Add additional logging information to tunnel edge routers. Now adds the local address to the router link chain. I don't know if I'm going to show that today, but that's interesting. Additional metrics are nice. The controller emits a bunch of metrics that are very, very useful. And the NetFoundry console, which uses and is built on OpenZiti, surfaces a lot of these things to customers and to our ops team for debugging. Authentication policies. I've talked to Andrew a little bit about these, only ever so much, and who knows if I'll remember what he told me. JWT primary secondary authentication. I actually don't know if I know about that one. And then required TOTP. I was reading this one before. That's an interesting one. So let's just go down and see what it has to say. Authentication policies. Configuration allows administrators to enforce authentication requirements. Oh yeah. So an authentication policy allows you to tie these policies to different endpoints, I believe. Let's see if we should default authentication policy.
I remember there was a comment in there about allowing the controller to basically turn off authentication for a particular endpoint by setting a property.
Well, I hope we can't turn all of them off, but what I know this was in regards to is the JWT. So, uh, what I remember, and boy, I wish I had asked Andrew ahead of time. Let me go back and see if I
Okay.
can find the old message that he had sent me. Policy. I doubt he's listening. Um, but what it was for was to allow the capability of third party authentications. So specifically, it was to allow our NetFoundry console to permit a user to trust something like uh, Auth0 or another IDP, and it would allow you to send in those JWTs from a different authentication mechanism and consider a user authentic and trusted. That was what I remember, but I'm trying to go through the notes here to see if there's anything that supports that. Auth policy, policy, system definition cannot be deleted. Following endpoints, properties. All right, maybe this is new authentication mechanisms available. Yeah, external JWT. That's what I was thinking of. Allows authentication by providing a bearer token. Introduce.
So then
Success.
if the edge is configured to trust a particular token signer, then all you have to do is present a token from that signer,
I believe so. Yes.
get an API
Yep.
session. And that's your authentication piece. Doesn't mean you have permission to do anything, but it
That's not
gets you.
authorization, right? Yeah. It is simply authentication. Yeah. Um, let's see. Creates a new signer. External ID. All right. Well, I think that's the gist of it. Um, who knows? Maybe Andrew will watch this back and correct me.
Yeah, well,
Maybe people.
I'd be interested in learning a little bit more about how to set up TOTP for a particular identity. If I understood correctly, that means that
Well,
like a tunneler or any Edge SDK really would require you to provide a currently valid time-based token.
Yeah, and that's actually really easy. You can do that right now with any identity, at least in the Windows version of our tunneler. I don't believe it's quite supported in the Mac yet, and I don't think it's supported in Linux yet. But in Windows, it's really trivial. So, for example, my Mattermost identity down here, the one that we chat with, you can see it has multi-factor TOTP authentication enabled. Every time I turn off and on my tunneler, I have to provide my digits. You enable that by just coming into here, clicking this little button. It'll generate an MFA. I'll go through it right now. Let me get my phone out. Oh, well, actually, if you don't have a phone, or if you're like me and lazy, you can also grab the secret this way and bring it to any of your favorite local uh, TOTP type of programs. I'm trying to add a new one right here now. Here, I'm going to give it a label, paste. I'm going to give it my secret, and I'll click save. And I'm going to copy these digits and paste them into here, and then click authenticate. Now you know all my codes. No! You'll get some recovery codes like this. And now I am TOTP enabled. So this comes out of the box with Ziti, with the Ziti Desktop Edge for Windows, actually. But what this is saying is now you can enforce it at enrollment time. Generally speaking, when you come in and you create an identity, you go through the add identity thing, you click your JD2, you click open, and you get a new identity down here. Generally speaking, you do not have to enable TOTP. You can see I went through and I did that just recently here for this dev client, but my other ones don't have multi-factor auth enabled. And for better or for worse, every identity you have, you get the choice to enable or disable, this time-based one-time password thing, TOTP.
Did I understand that correctly, that on a particular identity, as long as you are authenticated, you can get your recovery codes? But if you weren't authenticated, then you would have to provide either an MFA token or a
Even
recovery code.
even if you're authenticated, you have to provide the latest time-based token in order to recover your codes. So, to your point, no, you cannot simply get them by being authenticated. You have to provide a new one that actually matches what it's supposed to be. You get them
So
one
as long
time,
Okay, right.
and then you're supposed to save them, right? Like, so when you get those codes, you should save them somewhere.
You do only
I
get them
mean,
once.
yeah. Now you could always go back to the administration tool and disable it administratively, and then re-enable it administratively. But as a user,
Right,
you have to supply that again in order to get those codes back.
exactly.
Yeah. But now you can force this. So I would be able to come in and you can force this using an app WAN or service policy. I confused between. Let me actually do this. Boop, show me. Hey, I get confused sometimes between the NetFoundry console's terminology of app WAN and the OpenZiti terminology of service policy. But we have what is it called? Posture checks, and so you can create a posture check that enforces a user had to have had a successful MFA slash TOTP authentication in order to use the service. And if you don't, what happens is you come in here and you get a little exclamation point that tells you that you are not passing MFA. And so even though you can see the service, you cannot dial the service. And then when you look at the logs, in fact, this is going back to 1 second, going back to this and testing and verifying services. This is a really common mistake people will make is they will go out, they will enable MFA on their oh, I see how it happened. That's how it happened. Windows did it. They will enable MFA on their device, and when they do that, or on their identity, I mean, and when they do that, they then forget that they have to put the digits in. And when you turn on ZD, when you turn it on, maybe I should turn it off and on and see if I can show it. We're on a little tangent, but I'll do it here. Boom. I'll do it for you, Ken. I'll do it for Ziti TV. Alrighty, let's disable the service. Okay, now I'll turn it back on again, and you'll see I'll have two identities that show up. Both of them will have a little yellow lock icon, and then you're not able to see it. So I'm going to take a screen cap of my system tray down here. And you can see my CPU is just lit up too because I'm doing the restream. But you can see you'll get a little Ziti icon, and that little Ziti icon will have a little lock. And this is
Right.
your indicator that you need to go MFA if you want to use any of these services or enter your digits, right? So if I don't enter my digits, those services, I can't even see them at this point in time. When I enter the digits, it'll show me my services again. Now,
Right.
if
Okay.
I had a service policy in place and that service policy had a posture check in place, I would still get these services without providing my MFA, my TOTP. However, it would have a little exclamation point telling me that I can't use these services. And so I have to do the same thing for my Mattermost now because I turned it off and on again. I got to get those things and pass them into here. And now I can chat with Ken again. Yay. All right. Anyway, being able to enforce it is a new feature. You used to be able to enforce it, as it says right here. Used to be able to do it via posture checks, but that
Okay.
is a slightly opaque way of doing it because as a user, you don't get that little lock icon that shows up saying, "Hey, you can't actually get to this service." You know,
So
you'd have to be a little bit more
is an
smart about it.
authentication policy a totally different thing, or is it the evolution of posture checks?
It's I would say I don't think that they're really related. They're the posture checks are a a mechanism of enforcing policies uh, consistently or continually, whereas authentication is the first time, you know, when you're actually trying to obtain a session. So my understanding of this is it is the authentication policies is paving the way for different kinds of policies. We used to have username and password, and we had certificate based, and now we have this external JWT option as well. So I think it's an evolution of authentication, but I don't think that it's particularly related to posture checks in that way. If that makes sense. I see you nodding. Yeah. All right. Okay, well then let's go back here and maximize this. Click on the old PowerPoint. Okay, so we went through our release notes 20 minutes later. Took an MFA detour, love it. And now we'll look a little bit at how ZD protects services. So I've been working on a project for quite some time. It's not going as quickly as anybody wants it to, but it's about Prometheus. So Prometheus is a monitoring and uh, graphing solution, and it really it's a little bit different than ones I've used in the past because as opposed to a push based model where the target pushes data to a central repository, Prometheus's main desire is to scrape a target. It wants to actually go get them from the target. And I expect that that is because if you scrape a target and nothing comes back, well, then you can feel pretty good that that endpoint is probably
It
down.
failed. Yeah, or
Yeah.
the help of that
With
check
push
is not
based, with
happened.
push based, you don't get that particular feedback because, you know, all of a sudden they just stop showing up. So you have to kind of infer that it's failing.
Right.
Anyway, one of the requests was to, you know, show how the difference is between you know, classic services, regular as you would think of them as network services, and how ZD protects those services. So this document came to my mind because realistically it shows you kind of what has to happen in a normal world. If I'm going to use Kubernetes here, but like you don't need to use Kubernetes. This is just totally like you could you can just think of it. Kubernetes is just your deployment platform. So we won't focus on the fact that what a Kubernetes is, but this Kubernetes thing provides an API that's called the control plane that lets you interact with Kubernetes, lets you deploy pods and do that kind of fun stuff. So Prometheus can monitor Kubernetes itself. And so you can see I've got actually 3 instances of Prometheus listed here because one of these instances is going to do something called federating, where it actually reaches out and talks to Prometheus itself. In the classic world, you're going to have Kubernetes on the open internet. My internet, can't really make it much bigger. It looks all gross and disordered, but you can imagine the internet being all through this middle section. This Prometheus server is going to reach out and talk to this control plane, which it has to do through some kind of firewall. You'll have a port open somewhere. And so if you're smart, you'll probably whitelist the IP address of this Prometheus server. I would imagine that's what you would end up doing. And then your Prometheus server can scrape the Kubernetes control plane. And the same is true on the other side. If you had two Kubernetes clusters, you can scrape both sides. And then Kubernetes also provides this idea of an ingress controller, which is how you would access the things which you have deployed in your Kubernetes cluster. And so you need to go through an ingress controller in order to access things in your cluster. Here, this little blue section is showing you the private traffic between your ingress controller and your, in this case, it's Prometheus, but it could be any web server. It doesn't really matter, right? The whole idea is the most important point is there's an open port somewhere on the internet that Prometheus will have to obtain access to. Some firewall to maintain, that sort of stuff, right? So the classic way I've already kind of mentioned people do this is with the IP whitelist. I don't know if there are fancier ways. Maybe you have an actual private network and you can go through, and this Kubernetes cluster is all private to your network, but it's still listening on your network because there's a hole right here in Kubernetes allowing things in. Did I summarize that well, Ken? Anything?
Yeah, that's the basic problem with exposing ports. And yeah, introducing any kind of extra layer of security just adds quite a bit of complexity to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of the problems. It's so easy to run things in Kubernetes, but then exposing them can get complicated. You have several different options there. But I take
Yeah.
it the direction here of the arrows is like caller, callee.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, for sure. Also, in this kind of a world view, you have one-way traffic, right? You don't have. I mean, you have. It's. I would say it's the direction the connection was established. How about that? Because like you're still going to have data coming back, right? It's just the little blue. The little circle just indicates where it initiates. So it started here. It goes through the firewall hole, gets into the ingress container, leaves the ingress container, goes to Kubernetes, goes to Prometheus, gets its data, and then comes back again, right? So now,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead. You had something else,
No, I was just gonna say everything needs to be listening for the Prometheus server, which is gonna go reach out and collect its
right?
metrics.
So let's contrast that to, maybe, why resume slideshow? Why won't? All right, now, oh boy, now we're in a world of hurt.
I'm
We
still
have
seeing
to
the cluster A
find.
B slide.
I cannot show. I want. I can't get presenter view back. Let's come over here. Oh yeah, nice, nice. Oh, all right, let's try to stop. No, PowerPoint. No? Anything PowerPoint? Come on, hello.
Now I've got the
Here,
bullet.
here we
There we
go.
go.
Here we go. All right, now it's showing. Whew, we did it again. We did it. All right, so contrast that to doing this via OpenZiti. Right, with OpenZiti, you're still going to be able to initiate your connections from the remote machine. What will happen is your Prometheus server will go out through Ziti through a synthetic connection. In this case, I'm showing a truly Zitified Prometheus. And that's why it's got a Z. As you know, adding Z's is all we do. So this is indicating this is actually the Zitified version of Prometheus. That's cool because when this Prometheus server asks for data from this Prometheus server, it's not going to be via an open port. There will be no open port that this pod is listening on. So that's really, really important
Okay, so you've got three
because
instances of Prometheus here. The one in the middle has been modified so that it doesn't need additional sidecar
all of them,
software.
all of them are Prometheus.
All of them are
All,
the forked Prometheus.
That's right. And now this one out here is special because it gets this one out here is special because it gets the opportunity to create a listener that anybody on the network could access this instance of Prometheus over, or it could expose a Zitified endpoint that you could only access using Ziti. And this is what I'm working on, and this is what this is my next whiz bang cool demo is going to be.
Yeah,
So
it's end to
yeah,
end zero.
for sure. This has no listen. It'll have no listening ports anywhere except minus, like right here. Look at this one. This one over here. This one's important, and this one over here is important because now these Kubernetes control planes, which are, if you go look it up, they are high value targets. People want to
Yeah,
compromise the Kubernetes API, but now that Kubernetes API is totally hidden inside of that cluster. You cannot get to the Kubernetes API without being local to the Kubernetes cluster. Now,
right.
thankfully, if you're a pod in the Kubernetes cluster, you are able to access the control plane. And that's how we're going to do it here. And then this is also showing two different ways of, oh, actually, maybe I see what you're saying. No, you're saying the left-hand side. This one's actually not Prometheus. I need to take that Z out of here. My diagram is wrong.
It's got a
This one,
tunneler.
yeah, this one has the tunneler. Good point. Yeah, this one over here is Zetified. This one over here would be
Oh,
doing the
no, I
same
see it.
thing.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
there's
yeah. I
one side
gotta
that connects it through container A on the left
exactly,
side, and then on the
exactly.
right side there, you've eliminated that by
Yeah.
giving
So this
the
was
port to Prometheus.
right, right. And I don't know why one would do this because if you're deploying a Zetified Prometheus that's able to monitor an
It's
actual
redundant.
Zetified endpoint, then you probably would just expose ZD. Check it out. Anyway, I'll update my diagram. You you get the idea.
Yeah.
Um, so the only thing that's listening would be the Kubernetes control plane itself, and that will still have an open port because we're not going to be able to influence that from Kubernetes. That's like the I would say that's the quintessential difference between doing something via OpenZiti as opposed to the standard stock way of designing a network and designing your services. Is there anything that you think I might have missed in
Yeah,
there?
the thing that leaps out to me about that is that it sort of flattens the architecture where normally when you're thinking about the internet and the private, even if you've already graduated from thinking that it's actually safe to be private and that everything is hostile, presumed compromised network wise, even if we're squarely in that paradigm, still there's the internet side of the network and the LAN side, and you do use them differently. But this sort of flattens everything, so there's no things are more like peers than client and server, even though the peers are calling each other and one is a client implementing the other, calling the other. Still, network wise, everything's flat.
Yeah, and that is definitely how I think of it too. Because with a ZD overlay network, you don't have to worry about where things are deployed, how they got there. The entire internet becomes your LAN effectively, because all of your connections are outbound. Your machine will have no holes. In fact, all of the machines will have no open firewall holes. You don't have to worry about any inbound ports anywhere, including inside a Kubernetes cluster.
So,
Um,
is it strictly necessary? Do you happen to know for a pod to be able to reach the Kubernetes API server, or is there a presumed trust domain that in that way around the cluster where anything that is a pod needs to be able to? I know it normally can, or at least by
if
default,
I
it can reach
if
it.
I turn that around, I do not know if you can prevent pods from accessing the API plane. I imagine that you could. I
Yeah, if you think
imagine
of
you
net,
could.
the more I think about it, the more certain I am that it wouldn't be that difficult. You just need a network policy because the API server is in the default namespace, but you don't have to put your pods there. And you could like the most simple network policy would be let namespaces talk to each other. And so as long as you put your pods in another namespace, then that's your basic network policy. They can't actually, there's no reason for the workload to be able to reach the API server. The kubelet does, obviously, but not the workload.
Yeah, that's cool. I have not explored Kubernetes intra networking enough to know better, but that's neat. I might actually bring that into the discussion when I make a little demo and all that. Because
Yeah.
because then I could have a namespace that's totally outside of the default. Because you can see I'm just using the default namespace, and I don't
Yeah,
have a complex Kubernetes setup. And
right.
I wonder how many people even know about it.
I think,
Like
yeah, I think it would be, it really serves us to take command of those basic network policies and show how the principles of zero trust also apply inside the cluster. Because,
which is really
especially doing things
important.
like this. Yeah,
Yeah, really important. You compromise one pod and you have horizontal capability if you don't segregate your network,
right.
which you probably learn the hard way that it's a good idea to go and do that. And then when you want to expose one workload to another workload, what's the process of exposing that workload to another workload? With OpenZiti, obviously it'd be easy because you just go and you make a new policy. Maybe it's as
Yeah,
easy as that in Kubernetes, but at that point you're still having those listening ports.
right.
Some I don't know what the trade-offs are there, but that would be interesting.
Well, it would be premature to say that just a simple network policy gives you zero trust inside a Kubernetes cluster, but I think, especially because
Hmm.
of the container nature of everything, but it is another degree of assurance
Yeah,
that can make it
I
meaningful.
don't think I would even call it zero trust because you would clearly have a port that's out there listening, and that goes against the entire concept of a zero trust network, where anything inside of one zone can trust another zone. It's like opening a cider block, right? We don't encourage people to use cider blocks because that is a zero trust network anti-pattern. I'm also trying to get out of saying the word zero trust because
Non-zero trust.
as we've seen on that Reddit thread, people don't like the term zero trust whatsoever. All right, cool. So that's that. The next thing we were going to do is boop boop boop. Let's find the
That's what happens when you abuse a term as an industry.
that is what happens for sure. It gets overloaded and then becomes garbage, and then everybody
It's
hates it.
basically meaningless.
Yep. So the next thing is about verifying or testing services. I've got a whole bunch of stuff going on in my local environment here, but
Oh, he's bringing
let's
out the
just
terminal.
woo! Nerds are getting real. Love it. All right, so I've got three windows here. I've got a Windows PowerShell on my right. I've got just a generic Bash shell and Windows subsystem for Linux in the middle, and the same on the left here. Um, I'm bringing this up because the request was let's see if I can read the words. How do you test the security of an OpenZiti network? What are the tools? There's no IP addressing. What does it mean to use NSLookup and dig and those sorts of things? So let's take a little ride here. I think I have yeah.
We talking about services in general or specifically Edge SDK without a tunneler?
Services in general or an Edge
Right.
SDK
Like
with
if my app's not connecting, there are two main types, two main cases there. There's with a tunneler and without a tunneler, and a different set of problems, different set of potential failures.
I don't know if there's a yeah, I guess there's a different set of potential failures. Yeah. So I think if I'm understanding what you're saying, we've already agreed that we're going to be using a ZD network. We've already agreed that we're going to expose some service, whatever that service is. And now we need to figure out, are we exposing a service to a consumer using a tunneling application? Or are we exposing a service to a consumer with an application embedded solution?
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Yes. Then I agree with you. So I'm going to start off with the tunneler based approach.
Okay.
I expect that this will all still work, but it is live TV here, so who knows? I'm going to start Docker Compose in my left window.
Oh,
You can
you've got a
see
few containers in there.
I've added a whole bunch of them because I did it. Actually, this will show a little bit of a upcoming feature too. I think you and I were talking about wildcard DNS, which I totally forgot. I have a special build of the ZD Desktop Edge for Windows here. Uh-oh.
I've been adding in the
I just
wildcard.
turned it off, which adds in wildcard. DNS support. Let me turn this back
Okay.
on because
That's coming soon for Windows.
it is coming soon for Windows. Supported in Linux right now. That's the one that gets the love the quickest usually, and then we make a release for the other operating systems. So let me just turn on my identities again because I think that dev client is the one that I need access to. No. Okay, well that's cool. So I'm going to just go through the exact. So all right, let's level set. I've got a YouTube channel out here, OpenZiti. I'm actually going to go to it because I just did a similar demo just yesterday, and I have all of my commands that I care about listed in here, and specifically the ones that I care about are, you know what, I
I
want
didn't
to
see
make.
this yet.
Oh, you didn't see this? Well,
No,
it's
I've got it in the
stunning.
queue.
Whoops. Ugh, come on, come on. All right, I want to just find the one where I made a. Okay, so let's go back and do
Your
this
web
again.
browser is revolting.
Is that?
Your web browser is fighting back.
I think it's just the fat fingers of the people operating it. So I've execed into the container so that I could run Z login, so I could do things like Z edge list identities. And I've got a whole bunch of commands in here. The one that's important is this one right here, which is going to create my user a new identity. So I'm going to delete ZD edge, delete identity. What did I call this thing? ZDo Clint, ZD desktop edge for Windows Clint. I'm going to add him back again. And then I've got to exit the container and copy that someplace safe. Once I do that, I can now come over to here, add an identity, click on ZDo Clint, and you can see, hey, I've got no services. That's what I would expect. Okay, once I've done that, now, ZDo Clint. I got to find out where I added this guy some policies so that he can do some things. I'll delete the policy, put the policy back. Delete the policy, put the policy back. And now I should have two services show up. Right? Two? I see one. Okay, there's two. All right, now I have two services. And you can see the services which are really teensy tiny. Let's see if I can do this. Will this
That's
work?
okay. I can see there are two of them.
I can zoom just a tiny bit there. Blue site and red site. So now I have given my identity access to these two services. I can then go to other, and I can blue attach, and I can and I can red attach, and then Z. I've already set all this up ahead of time. ZD edge tunnel run -I red site.json. Unable to host wildcard service because the ZD Edge router is not available. Oh, the demo's not going to work if that doesn't work. ZD Edge, ZD login. No. Let's go back to the controller. See what our fabric shows us. ZD login, fabric list, links. That shows everything is being up. So what does it not like? Unable to host wildcard service. Wildcard web.test.red site. The ZD router is not available. All right. Well, do blue and see what happens with blue. ZD edge tunnel run blue.json. Okay. Well, maybe this will be great. Like, this is what we wanted to review. How do you troubleshoot when something's wrong? So let me go back to my ZD Desktop Edge for Windows. I should have two suites of services, the blue site and the red site. Now, since I'm using wildcard DNS, it gets a little bit tricky. And I'm going to come over to this window here. I'll change the temp just so it's not so ugly. And then I'm going to do a dig. Does dig work? No. I'll go to Windows Subsystem for Linux because Windows doesn't have a dig available.
That's where you've got it installed.
Yeah, well, I had Sigwin on my path, so dig would work, and I don't know why it's not working. But we can dig at now. This is important because the tunnelers all provide a nope, this one. They all provide a DNS server, and even though it's listed as disabled, it's really not. I don't know why it's listed as disabled. But in the Ziti Desktop Edge for Windows, there'll be a server listening on whatever
That's
this
per
IP
tunneler,
address.
not per identity, correct?
That's right, per tunneler. Yeah, usually you only have one tunneler running, but I
But
can
all
dig
the
it.
identities share the same private IP space on your device.
Um, they share a predefined identity space or IP space
Yeah, that's right.
under
They're not sharing networking in reality. It's
right.
layer three, point to point. There's no bleed between them.
Yeah, so you can see the address space that'll get assigned is 100.64.0.0, and then whatever mask you decide to use. In this case, it's a 10. So I can dig at that IP address and type something like iot1.blue site. And when I do that, I'll actually get a result back because Ziti went through and assigned an IP address in that space for that particular um, DNS entry. That's why we
Right.
call it wildcard DNS, because we are intercepting anything that starts or ends with .blue site. So if
So
I
that binds on your device, that binds that IP address to your crypto identity.
Yes, the IP address will be bound to, and this is where it's not a identity, it's whichever one of these identities is providing that service. But yes,
Right.
that identity will represent that that particular service. And that's why one of the things that you can get into is actually overlapping intercepts. So you certainly could go out and make a star.baloney.blue site or whatever and potentially overlap
Oh,
a
right.
other
Yeah.
another service. And if you do that, that's a very difficult thing to debug and figure out. But people absolutely have done that before. I don't
It's a good reason
think
to use some kind of a naming convention for your, if you're going to have private DNS services like this.
yeah, it's not just services like this. It's really any service at all.
Well, any service that you're going to
You,
deliver by a domain name, that it
no, no,
makes
no, no,
sense
no,
to have.
no, 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 any service at all, because a lot of times, well, with a tunneler. So now we're starting with a tunneler because my expectation people will probably start with tunnelers. They won't go right to app
Probably,
embedded,
yeah.
but they'll start with a tunneler and just play with it, get their feet wet, figure it out. With a
Or
tunneler,
just have it on one end or the other.
sure, but we're talking tunnelers on one end, which is the client end, which is doing intercepting. That's all those are important pieces to remember because you're going to go and you're going to say intercept this IP or intercept this domain. If you
Right.
create two services with the same domain name, you made a mistake. But people do it all the time because you might not realize that you're doing it. Oh, I
And
should
from your device's
clarify.
perspective, there's no way to prevent that,
I
or
should clarify.
because
Well, hang on. I should clarify. You absolutely can have two different services with the same intercept host name. It's the same port and host name that becomes a problem. So I can make two separate services, one for HTTP, one for HTTPS, and be perfectly fine with two separate services with the same intercept host name. The port and host name tuple is what's important.
gotcha.
Where it goes off the rails is when you make a new service that uses a port range and then absorbs port 80 N443, right? So easy to do. You could just go out there and say, "Oh, I'm just going to make one that sucks up all the ports," which is of course another one of those zero trust anti patterns. But if you did it because it's easy, then it's very easy to cause a conflict and not quite understand what
Right.
you've done or how you've done it. So I have added that DNS server to my Windows subsystem for Linux's Resolve Conf. So that when I just run a straight up dig, it should also work now. And I did that because now I could do curl to HTTP iot1.blue site, and I think this one's on port 8000. And we can see this is not working, which is kind of what I expected based on the fact that the red site told me that the router is not available. I don't know what I did wrong here. You can go out and look at YouTube, but let's take a look now at what I would do to figure out that is not going to work for
The
me.
client is in the red site.
But be
Go ahead.
careful. The exit point for the traffic from this curl is in the red site or the blue site. In this case, it was a blue site.
Blue
And those
site.
things and those things are both sitting inside of a Docker network somewhere, right?
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
locked away behind Docker
They're
network,
separate Docker networks.
right?
So a
And
Docker
so
bridge is by default isolated from other Docker bridges, and its only exit point from its little zone, its little isolated LAN, is the bridge interface on the host.
right, right. So I've gone through and I have set um, my log level to info so that when I do this curl up here, I can see if my local tunnel is accepting the traffic or not, if it's sending the traffic or not, or if something's weird going on. So you can see when I ran that curl from Windows Subsystem for Linux, I received a message that said, "Hey, I have actually successfully resolved that address." But I didn't provide the right port, and so my local machine didn't intercept any traffic. If I provide
Right.
port 8000, which should be working, and I don't know what I have done wrong, then that should have absolutely worked. So look, we're going to do some live debugging. Well, that's the wrong
Port
identity.
80.
Let's look at that's the wrong identity. This is the one I want. Yeah, port 8000. So here we should be seeing traffic on port 8000 or 80, either of which should absolutely work. And we should be seeing traffic. Now, it might be that those messages are in the debug, and that might be why I was at debug before. I don't want to do that. I want to set the logging level. All right, so let's try this again. Port
Okay.
80. Okay. We do see some completed get headers that's not relevant. Not relevant. Bunch of debugs. We got something interesting over here. What was that? Info, events, timeout. No, nothing that seems to be helpful. Let's try port 8000 now. I'm looking for an error, to be honest. I expect this to show me an error, and I
You were
expect it to
at
tell me
info before, so it would have shown, right, if there was one, or
it
even a
would
warning
have.
message.
Yeah, it would have. In this case, I was looking to see if we could see something that says, let's do this. Let's go to WinZiti. Let's grep for the word intercept. Intercept on ZD tunneler log. Intercepted address. That is UDP. No, no, no. None of those are what I want. I don't know what I have done wrong here. This is fun. I have a good debugging session. So I have a
Would
service,
have asked for more. So what's your next step?
right?
If you just try to
So
use the service, normally ZD just gets out of your way and lets you connect to stuff. But if it's not working, your app is curl, and from curl's perspective, it's just getting a connection refused. Like there's no server there.
yes, so it seems as though let me find set logging level info. It seems as though either ZD is not intercepting my traffic, which could be, or I turned off the log. Back to this. Or there's something else getting in the way. And so I'm specifically looking for the fact that it does not seem to be telling me it's trying to dial a particular service, which is frankly quite weird. I don't know what I would do in this particular situation
Well, I can tell you
because
from my experience that working with that tunneler, well, working with the core tunneler, that getting a domain name resolved is a totally different level of success from actually getting through. Definitely two stages there, because you can get the domain name resolved even if there's no terminator.
Yes, in fact, that's exactly what I am expecting to see here. I wanted to see the no terminator because I have turned it off both of the other sides.
Now that you
So
mention
let
it, I do usually see that message on from like from the tunneler's perspective that's
yeah,
providing
it
the
would show up
intercept
down here.
control.
Yeah, for sure. And I am quite perplexed as to why and what I might have done wrong here. So let's docker exec minus IT to docker zd controller run bash, and inside here we're going to do a zd edge list. No, not list links, list services. Oh, well, I was going to say the other thing I could do is the polyzer zd login, zd edge policy add advisor for zdo clint identities. Well, okay. So fantastic.
There you go.
This was useful. I'm going to actually toss the minus Q on here because I like the minus Q. It's saying that the identity has no edge routers assigned. And so we probably need a better bug, a better response on this because this was difficult to track back. But it has pointed out a really useful thing in the ZD CLI, the policy advisor.
Yeah,
If you have never used ZD Edge policy advisor identities, it's killer. Um, you can see it is clearly identified that we have no edge routers assigned. We need to adjust our edge router policies. And
looks
so
like it
going
checks both
through,
kinds. It just simulates them.
it checks for access from a identity to services and access from an identity to some routers. You must have access to a router, obviously, in order to be able to participate in the overlay network. And we have no edge routers assigned. So let's see if I can
Hey, Clint,
remediate.
real quick, tell me if this is a true statement because I want to test my understanding here. So with Policy Advisor, you said you could simulate the policies from the identities perspective or the services policy, or the services perspective. Is this a true statement? For the service, for the connection to succeed, that is from curl to the server, to the web server, then there must be at least one online edge router in common between the identity and the service.
It's a nuance that I'm mulling, which is that you need one in common, and it needs to be online. I don't like the way you said it. I don't think that is entirely quite right. Generally speaking, um, you need, in order for the service to be routable, both the identity and the the
Service?
terminating identity. They both need a common edge router. That is true. I don't know if they had a common
Yeah,
one and you
because
took
it's
it
you got the
offline.
service edge router policy that's being simulated when you do policy advisor services as well. It's simulating service edge router policy, and this is I'm testing my understanding again. It's simulating the service edge router policy and the bind service policy are being simulated with policy advisor services, and then counterpart to that would be simulating the two other types of policies for policy advisor identity, and those would be edge router policies and dial service policies. And so there has to be one online edge router in common between the two types of edge router policy.
I don't know if it needs to be online. That's
Well,
like
it would have to be, yeah, because the I've noticed
I
the
don't
policy
know that.
advisor kicks back that common routers are this many out of this many because this many are online.
Yeah. Well, let's see if we can adjust this. I Yeah, a common router must be online. I don't believe that means your traffic has to go through that router, though. You know what I mean? So that I actually don't know that answer. So we have list service policies. That is not how you do it. All right, so we have a dial and a bind and a bind. And I don't want service policies. I want service edge router policies, right? No, I want edge router policies. All right, where's my identity in here? So anybody is able to use a public edge router.
Yeah, you got a blanket policy for your curl client side.
We have no edge routers with a public attribute on them.
Ah, right. So that's not a magic word. That's one you have to actually assign.
That's right. So let's run ZD Edge update edge router and assign one. Now, if I list edge routers, you'll see one is available. And if I run policy advisor, now I can bind.
Boom. Okay.
Now
Okay.
that will no now port 8000 should show me the terminators. Right there. Nope, that's not it. Try again. I don't want to control C, I just want enters.
Did you have one problem or two problems to fix from Policy Advisor?
Policy advisor showed me no problem. ZD login.
I mean, you
Edge
fixed one.
entities. ZD Flint. They're both okay. See.
Yeah, that's the one you fixed.
As opposed to
I was asking if there was another Policy Advisor issue that you had identified that you had not yet fixed.
I was going to turn on this because now these things don't complain about not being connected. I expected this to return the no terminators available. That was what I expected to see because I had turned these off. Like terminating connection. That is not it. Up
But the
here.
Terminator thing only applies if the hosting side is a tunneler, right?
No, you always need a terminator. It just depends on whether it is a tunneler or a router
I
or
misspoke.
created
I was trying to say tunneler.
or created manually. Like you can create them manually too. Like if you want what's the word router terminated, you can make your own terminator, and it's still not working, which is interesting because my identity now has access. I'm going to exit out of WSL. I'm going to use curl out here.
See if you get the same result in Windows.
Yeah. Not, I don't expect to not get the same result, but I saw something flash by over here. Let's see what that has to say. That's just reconnection messages, nothing major. Those things are connected. This thing is just not getting traffic now. Are those so? Now let's go into let's do a Docker exec. Could it be that? Oh, I bet I know what the problem is. So I did some special sauce when it came to setting up these containers over here. That's what it is. I think that's what it is. So if I cat on Etsy hosts, the problem is Etsy hosts doesn't have the. Oh, and I didn't. Oh no. I had to, in order to make this to work, I had to do some fancy stuff in Etsy hosts because I was trying to emulate a situation for the person who I was doing this for. But when I
Oh,
did
they
that,
caught you in a state.
yeah, when I did that, I apparently lost my hosts file stuff, and I had a
So you're
nice
saying
little
that you'd specially configured the operating system for some experiment on the hosting side?
yeah, exactly. So I have to run this little thing right here, run this little thing right here. Now if I cat Etsy hosts, now I should be able to curl to iot1.blue site 8000. Okay, so now let me try running this ZDS tunnel again. And let me run ZDS tunnel down
So you're
here. And I'm
bouncing
going to do this.
the caller and the callee tunneler.
Bounce them because I needed access to the um, the environment. No other reason. But that expected to work now, and now not even showing me the intercept.
The service binds on 80 and 8080, or sorry, 80 and 8000, correct?
It depends on which one. The IoT one should bind on 8,000, and IoT two should
Okay.
bind on 80. So I made one wildcard that works on both, but I don't know why it's not working. Getting to the end of our hour here. Well, this has been a lot of fun, Ken. We haven't had a failure of a ZTV for a while. Usually we end on a good note. This is going to go out on a
It's
bummer.
important to keep going for it. I mean, this is
Yeah,
it's really
it
good
is.
practice, just
This was
explaining. Yeah.
well, it's live. I, re- I
Once
don't
in
know what I
a
did wrong. I don't know what I did wrong, frankly.
You'll
So
figure it out in about 30 seconds.
that's how it always is. And, I come back after it and I'm like, oh man, I know what I did now. Ziti login. Let's do a Ziti Edge policy advisor minus Q. All right. So this one doesn't have access to any services. Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? None of those are really particularly important. Let's see, what's the other one we can do?
I'll
Services.
zoom this in so I can see a little better.
Oh man, it's tough to see.
I know
I
I
thought it
said
was.
I was going to zoom the to
Oh,
maximize the
yeah, I got
window
you.
so
I
I could
got you.
actually read it better.
I can always end big in this too. Um, yeah. So I've got identities that all have access to dial. How many have actually? I got some that have access to bind. Those are the two that matter. And so I expect I'd have to do like at this point I have to do like a TCP dump
Is there
on.
anything that's not covered by Policy Advisor?
I don't think so.
Posture checks, maybe?
No, I don't. Yeah, maybe, but they would show up in the logs
That's part of the
for.
service policy, but maybe it's only checking attributes
No, it would
on
show up in these
the.
logs. It would show up in these logs here. When you fail a posture check, it says it clearly tells you that you can't dial it and
Right.
why. But I am entirely
Something to do with
confused.
your networking, going between layers of the operating system.
I don't know. It's not even sending traffic. It's like it's not catching it, and I don't know if maybe my. I wonder if I flush the DNS. Gonna matter. I think it's the right IP address. The other thing you can do is you can actually access the IP address because at the end of the day, the tunneler is doing nothing more than capturing an IP address,
Well,
and so
the log was saying that it was resolving the name, right? So you're wondering if
it
maybe
is
it just
it
didn't
is
get to that
definitely
point.
resolving the name, but it's as though like I'm not seeing the word intercepted. Usually, let's go back to this and let's go back to this. Actually, I'm gonna go full ham on this.
Going all in.
I'm gonna grep for intercept. So usually, and I'm gonna go and try to access Mattermost now. Where's browser? Any browsers anywhere?
I'll send
There's
you a
no
message
browser.
over there so you can see if you're getting anything.
No, I want to go to it myself to make a new connection just to make sure that it happens. So see this? You should absolutely see intercepted address at, right? Like
As an
that is
example,
what
yeah, totally.
I'm looking for. And then
So the only difference then is that WSL is going up through Windows to Windows
I'm out of
Terminal, right?
WSL here. No, I'm running it from PowerShell now.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you surfaced to eliminate that. Okay.
Yeah. So like intercept
So
address.
then
This
what's
is
the
what I
difference?
should see.
Yeah, so it's not getting that far in the process, meaning that
Yeah, right. So you need to see intercepted address. And if
the
you don't
identity
see
in Windows Terminal in the Windows Desktop Edge, the identity is showing the service is available, correct? And using exactly the same port and domain name. And so it's just wildcard DNS is the only difference between Mattermost and this other service?
I guess. Yes, I wonder if I mean, I'm running a dev build. I suppose it's possible I broke it. That's I didn't even think of that, but, like, the fact that it's not intercepting what I want it to intercept is absolutely and utterly confusing.
You found a bug.
Maybe I've been just fighting something I did, which is, of it's always possible and frustrating when you're the developer. But you can see I've intercepted Mattermost here, and that's what I would expect to see. And it's the um, resolved the IoT one dot red site properly.
Right. So if you
I
did that
wonder.
with curl, you do get back that IP address. Like curl-v would show you that it resolved that name.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
weird. Well, I guess we're gonna end it here, Ken. I don't know
Yeah,
what I did wrong. I'm gonna blame myself because I am doing development on that tunneler at the moment. So, uh, well, that's our ZD TV. That's
well,
our
this is an area of very
ZD
active development. It's going to evolve and become more more well defined.
Yeah. So we went over the change log. We saw how OpenZiti protects services, and then we watched me fail miserably trying to demo connecting the services. But maybe it was all part of the plan, Ken. Maybe all along I really wanted to fail. Maybe I wanted to just be able to show people active live debugging of what the hell's going wrong with my ZD service.
You do have a
We'll
lot
ne-
of
we'll
interesting
never know.
visibility this way.
Yeah.
You get the feedback from the network in most cases. Like after like on a regular build, not necessarily a dev build, but like when the messaging framework is working, you get really interesting layered feedback from the caller's perspective about what exactly like where things are breaking down.
You certainly can. All
Normally, you
right,
do. Yeah.
Ken. Yep.
All
Well,
right.
we'll call it a day,
Okay.
and we'll see everybody next time. Next week, though, Paul Lorenz is going to take us on a tour of HA service configurations. So that'll be fun.
Cool.
All right, man.
Sounds
See
good.
you.